Thank you, Chair. Just to be in the interest of clarity, I used to work for NatWest Markets and then subsequently the Royal Bank of Scotland for a few years. So just to be clear about that. May I start with Anne Boden, if she's still there? I'd just like to ask Anne about the British Business Bank. In your comments in the opening question to the Chair, you mentioned the digital process and that there's a lot of work going on to improve that. Are you optimistic that that work will be effective, particularly given the increasing demand from bounce back loans that we're anticipating?
I think there's two things going on here. It's the banks themselves having to gear up to do these loans in a different sort of way very, very fast. And then there's the British Business Bank collecting the data. We've yet to see the detail of how Bounce Back will collect the data. I very much hope it's going to be very lightweight and we can do it very easily. But with the original CBIL scheme, the idea was that for every loan that a bank wrote, they'd have to key it into a system. And that's not sustainable. Now, the British Business Bank is working on a program whereby that will be replaced by a electronic interface, and that's great. And I think that will be done. It'll be done in probably 6-7 weeks, and it'll all happen. My greater concern at the moment is that the processes within all the banks won't take the strain of what's happening to process all these loans and bounce back that quickly. I think there's going to be a scale problem here. And I think the more we actually focus on what are we going to do if we have to prioritize? What do we have to do if not everybody can get the loan they want? I talk to customers all the time. I was talking to customers 11 o'clock last night, and they were telling me that they feel desperate. They've got to get in quickly because it might run out. And I think that's what we're seeing at the moment. So it's all about scale. It's all about giving people reassurance that they will get that loan if they wait a couple of weeks, and managing that. And I think we have to look for government to manage expectations and give them reassurance that over the next couple of weeks, as the banks process these loans, it won't run out and it won't be disadvantaged.
Thank you. What is your experience, has your experience been of the accreditation process as far as the British Business Bank has been? We've heard in this committee previously that the bank had 2 members of staff dealing, it went to 25. What's your experience and where are we now, do you think, on that?
Yeah, I think that initially the British Business Bank were probably put in a situation where they had to do this very quickly. And the easiest way of getting things up and running was to deal with the people that were already accredited and get them up and running. For a smaller bank that's very, very keen to do this, because we have customers that desperately need these loans. It's been rather frustrating because we've had to wait until the big banks have done the negotiation. But there's a commitment there. The British Business Bank had conference calls with me over the weekend, have been very accommodating in processing our application as quickly as possible. But it is, there are two speeds here. The big banks can negotiate with BBB. In some way, we have to make sure that we're part of this scheme. We have a commitment to our customers. Our customers are desperate for these loans. We want to be part of it. We think we're not going to make money on these things, but we have to do it. We all have to pull together as an industry to make sure British businesses survive. And it's painful out there. And we've got to get those loans out there as quickly as possible.
Is it fair to characterise the situation? Everyone's working really hard. I mean, there's no doubt in terms of the commitment and the desire to get loans out there and to help business. Would you characterise the British Business Bank as a bottleneck in this process overall?
I think that, somebody has to negotiate. Somebody has to be the go-between between HMT and the banks. and a British business bank were told, these are the principles of the guarantee, go out there and negotiate it. And they are putting documents in place. I think they worked through the night negotiating with the big bank on this scheme. We have been in contact all weekend, sending things back and forth. Everybody is desperate to make this work. We have no option. It must work to save our businesses. But we're all working under pressure in this day and age. I think this is not a normal day-to-day world we're in. Everybody's under pressure, but I think everybody is committed. That's the big banks, people like ourselves and the fintechs, and the BBB. But it's not easy. A lot has to be done very quickly.
And just one more before I widen it out a little bit. When you look at the business bank's website, for example, and across the schemes, you see the information that businesses have to. It says on there you've got to, provide this. It looks quite extensive. It could be a little bit intimidating, I think, to some businesses. Do you think across the schemes the balance between what it looks like we're asking of businesses and the risk that you as lenders and the government as a guarantor is being asked to take, do you think the balance is about right on that?
Yeah, I think it's quite important to actually put ourselves in the shoes of the customer. As we can see, a lot of people are talking about very, very high approval rates. Approving 80%, 90% of those loans coming through. And that is because we're asking the customers to put all the information together. And when you got all the information together, we'll approve you. Business is not like that. People want to drip feed that information to you and want to know if they are going to get that loan. So I think we have to put more emphasis on making it an easy process that people can feel their way through rather than just approvals. Because if you actually set the hurdle on an application as being absolutely everything being crystal clear and everything ticking all the boxes, you will get those high approval rates. But it's going to be the detriment of customers and detriment to many of those businesses out there at the moment. That lending and borrowing is not something they've ever done. Businesses that never thought they'd need to borrow money are having to do something, and they're dealing with banks that are putting very high expectations on them. We're not perfect. All of the industry needs to flex our processes to make it really possible for customers.
Thank you. And could I go to David Oldfield? And could I just get your view on what Anne's just said? I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, about customers who have never borrowed. Yeah. It's about getting to that another stage where potentially business are worried that there isn't the capacity and that they will be in some kind of queue and that they won't get, that the scale will be such that there'll be a fear. Do you agree with that kind of that view?
Well, I completely recognise the concerns. I mean, these are unprecedented times, and what a tough time to be out there running your own business. A shocking time, and we're all, I know, absolutely mobilised and very committed to helping all of our business customers as best we can. I think that perhaps there's a difference here between the smallest business banking customer who's never borrowed before, and that's in large part now what the bounce back loans is intended to help with today. Small loans, minimal information up front, self-certification, cash paid within a day or two. That's absolutely targeting that end of the market. And it's really at those smaller loans when they were under the auspices of CBILS. We've certainly struggled because of the big volumes in there at that end of the market, where we're having to take some KYC information from customers who really haven't contacted us in the time they've ever banked with us. So we've never had to do that. So that has been much harder. So I'm feeling very optimistic that the bounce back loan will really help some of those smaller business customers get the money they desperately need very quickly. I think for the kind of medium and larger size business customers, I think this is much more routine for them. Most of them borrow money today. When I take out 60,000 of these kind of medium and large sized SMEs, 50,000 of them borrow today. They've got term loans in place. So when they come to us and say, either can I have a capital repayment holiday or can I have an overdraft, and we've been getting about 1,000 of those a day, or they come to us kind of 100 odd a day, 150 a day and say, can I have a CBILS loan? They're talking to a relationship manager who they know quite well, who understands their business quite well. And actually our time from start to finish on those CBILS loans for that part of the market is a couple of weeks, give or take, for loans averaging £250,000. So I think that's kind of okay. Everyone's working very well together. We all know what we're doing. I think the challenge you've pointed to and Anne has brought to life is that very small end of the business banking market where there's huge and unprecedented volume, where we're, I think, all getting into our stride. But bounce back loans will be a great help.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And I think I'm running out of time, but if I could just ask Paul Thwaite one final question as a major thought for the future. Are you concerned about the levels of debt that small companies are taking on, particularly when we'll be looking at, potentially a future investment that they'll need to get us out into a nice recovery phase?
I think it's an important question. I think businesses are very mindful of the level of leverage, whether that's large companies or whether that's small companies. It is somewhat inevitable as we come out of this crisis that ultimately we're going to have a lot of companies that have more debt than they originally planned to. So I think what's crucial is we think there'll be different phases of this crisis, and it'll be absolutely crucial that banks work with their customers as they go through the different phases to make sure they're getting the support that they need as the circumstances change. So it's a topic that's very front of mind. I think it will come to bear in the kind of second or third part of this crisis, but ultimately there will be more, for those who borrow, there will be a lot more companies who are more heavily indebted. But I think the industry, and I think NatWest, we have a responsibility to work with those customers once we've come out the other side of the crisis to make sure that they can continue to invest in their business, employ staff, help the wider productive capacity of the UK economy. And that's the way that we're thinking about it. Albeit at the moment, it feels like our immediate priority is to make sure we can get as much money to as many customers as we possibly can, because I think, as Anne said, that is the absolute essential requirement today.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm out of time, but thank you very much.